House of EdTech, episode 80.
Hi, this is Danny Kennis from DannyKennis.com, and you're listening to the House of EdTech with the amazing Chris Nesi.
Support for this episode of House of EdTech comes from SummerPD.com. Expand your knowledge of Google Classroom and apps, formative assessments, and much more. SummerPD.com offers 10 courses that you can get for just $25 when you use the coupon code House of EdTech. Sign up now to access all of the courses that will meet your professional development needs on your schedule. And again, thank you to SummerPD.com for all your support.
Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nesi, and the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips that you can hear about today and use tomorrow. I talk to teachers, leaders, and creators just like you and have them share their stories. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn.
And welcome back inside the House of EdTech. First thing I gotta say is, I can't believe this is episode number 80. This is so exciting. I love these milestone episodes. And it always just seems to work out that I have a really interesting guest for these milestone episodes. Maybe it's on purpose, but I think it's pretty much on accident. So thank you for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Coming up in this episode, we have the EdTech Thought, and I'm going to talk about what to make time for and what I make time for. I have a great EdTech recommendation that if you are into photo and graphic design, this is a great alternative to Photoshop. And of course, I have the House of EdTech VIP to go along with the featured content, a conversation I recently had with Kerry Gallagher. Before we get to that, though, first, I made this announcement a couple episodes ago near the end of the episode, but if you're listening to this, I would love it if you wanted to be a part of a community that I'm growing on Facebook. And if you'd like to join the House of EdTech Facebook group, all you need to do is go to chrisnesi.com/Facebook. And since I'm talking to you about this right now, as I record this episode, I'm actually recording this live via Facebook Live inside the group. So if you were a part of the group as I recorded this, then you may have had the opportunity to watch it. And if you come out and join the group, you will be able to go back and see me do this live. So if you're interested, go once again to chrisnesi.com/Facebook. Got some feedback from Trisha Lewis. She is at TA Lewis. And you know what? Maybe that's Lois. Louis. I am a little tired. I did a lot of work in the backyard today here at the House of EdTech. So anyway, Trisha, she checked out the Extensity Chrome extension and she loved it. And if you don't recall, this was mentioned and suggested by Derek Larson back on episode 76, the 2016 SmackDown. If you missed that episode, go to chrisnesi.com/76. But she loves the Extensity Chrome add-on, and you can connect with her. She is, again, at TA Lewis, and there's a link to that in the show notes. In a segment that I have been trying to get off the ground, so now that I've got somebody who did it, maybe this will prompt you to participate in it, but I need to thank Nicole Naditz because she has answered the question, technology is valuable in my classroom because, and she called the feedback hotline, and Nicole had this to say.
You have one new message.
Hi, Christopher. My name is Nicole Naditz. I am a French teacher near Sacramento, California, and you can reach me via email or through Twitter. My email is NNA D like David, I, T like Tom, Z like Zebra. and at gmail.com. And my Twitter is at Nicole Naditz. Again, Naditz. Technology is valuable to my classroom because technology brings the world to my classroom and my classroom to the world. Through technology, my students are engaged in rich explorations and analysis of media sources from multiple continents. Technology also allows my students to connect, create, communicate, and collaborate meaningfully with other French speakers around the world using tools such as TES Blend-Space, Spiral, Dot Storming, Google Suite, and more. Students' learning isn't limited to our four walls, and they harness technology alongside their content knowledge to do authentic work for an audience beyond the teacher and a purpose greater than a grade.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for taking time to answer the technology is valuable to your classroom because, and if you would like to do the same thing, you can go to chrisnessy.com/feedback, and you can do SpeakPipe, you can Voxer to me, you can call the House of EdTech hotline, and you can leave that message at any time and share with me and everybody else why technology is valuable in your classroom. And now, the EdTech Thought. So this EdTech Thought is called What to Make Time For. I've spoken in previous episodes and given previous EdTech thoughts about being intentional about our time and to really think about what activities we give ourselves to. I feel like beating this dead horse just a little bit more, and I would like to use myself as the example. My time is not only publicly but privately divided into four major areas: husband, father, educator, and podcaster. While I joke that Caitlin makes me list them in that order, I am completely intentional about it. Being a good husband and an even better father are the number one priorities in my heart of hearts. Caitlin and the boys, they're my world. My teaching career and this podcast, they could both end tomorrow. But with a strong wife, and believe me, and you know, she is strong, and my family at my side, I would still be wealthy and I'd be very much complete. Now, would I love to be the type of EdTech personality that is afforded some of the time and the resources to jet set around our great country, even the world, and present at so many of the wonderful conferences that take place year-round and worldwide? Sure, I would, but not at the expense of those that I hold dear. My boys, they are only going to be this young one time, and I can't really pass that up. Would I like to have a different job that is more in line with my interests and professional talents? You bet I would, sure. In fact, I almost took a job in the fall of 2016. I actually didn't take the position because while it would have been a great opportunity, it wasn't the right time for my family, and everything else I was doing, it just didn't line up with where I wanted to go professionally. So it's an opportunity that up until now, I didn't really talk about, but I didn't take it. So an example of family comes first, and I know that there are going to be other opportunities. I just need to make that happen. Carving out time for my professional adventures isn't always easy, but I am able to do it. I am committed to only attending pretty much one education event per month, and there are a lot of them held here in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. Living in New Jersey, this can be challenging because there are so many great events that take place throughout the year. But I have my must-attend events like EdCamp New Jersey, TCT or Tomorrow's Classrooms Today, EdCamp Leader, among others. And I fit others in pretty much when I can. But going back to my four words, educator and podcaster, they encompass the other 50% of my existence, believe it or not. 5 years ago, I moved into the truly non-traditional education role of the in-school suspension teacher. Not because I didn't enjoy teaching social studies or couldn't teach social studies, but because I needed more from education, and my desire to do more with technology needed to happen someplace new. I wanted to make my mark and a difference teaching teachers, and that's my focus. I want to teach teachers how to better integrate technology into their classrooms. The previous 79 episodes of this podcast, encompassing over 79 hours of content in 3 years, is my attempt to show the world, A, how I learn, and B, what's important to me, and hopefully you find value in this as well. The podcast is what I'm really committed to. I don't think I've ever missed a scheduled release for any of the previous 79 episodes. My level of passion for this podcast is unrelenting, as I'm always looking to try new things with the sound, and as I said before, I'm actually doing this episode live on Facebook. I don't see any of this changing anytime soon. So I look forward to more late nights conducting interviews, researching the recommendations I give out, recording, editing, creating this content, including the show notes, just for you. I mean, this podcast is like a third child, and it's much easier than an actual child. I create the House of EdTech as my professional and personal hobby and passion. This podcast has led to the creation of such things as the Education Podcast Network, the Shift Ed and Podcast PD podcast that I now co-host, as well as my role as a producer and editor of the Google Teacher Tribe podcast with Matt Miller and Casey Bell. And my commitment to creating content has even spilled over into the father aspect. Miles has his own Facebook Live show on Monday nights, and it's called The Miles Show. And I'm looking forward to documenting and creating memories with him and watching him grow. The latest memory that we made this week was he finally lost his first tooth. And that tooth was literally hanging on by a string. But it's now gone, and the tooth fairy took care of business. So there you go. I say all this because, honestly, I had a tough week. There were some things that happened professionally, and you know what? I wouldn't necessarily call them edu-fails, but there are some things that just made me think, and some of them involve specific people. But you know what? Life moves on, and I'm going to continue to create and do the things that are going to put me in a direction and get me to a place where everything just kind of falls together. And I know that doesn't happen on accident, and it will continue to take a lot of hard work. So what do you make time for? And how do you make time for it? I'd love to hear your comments in the show notes on chrisnessy.com/80, or again, SpeakPipe, Voxer, call the hotline. I'd like to know how you divide your time and what are the things that are important to you outside of education. And that's my EdTech thought. And now for this episode's House of EdTech recommendation. I'd like to recommend and talk a little bit about Krita, Krita. Krita strongly focuses on being a generic image manipulation and painting application in the style of Photoshop or GIMP. Photoshop, lots of money. GIMP, free. Krita, free. When we consider the term quote-unquote Photoshop alternative, we don't strictly mean an alternative tool to help you manage photos, color correct them, resize them, or get them ready to share. Sure, you could probably do those things with Krita, but the tool is really designed for artists looking for a painting application to create original digital art, web and print comics, concept art, and more. The app has all of the typical features you might expect from a digital art tool, including layers, layer management, masks, and selections, transformation tools, a full color palette, and even some perks like drawing assistance, a resource manager, and, quite frankly, a very friendly interface that'll really seem familiar if you've done any graphic or photo editing in the past. Krita can even support, open, and edit Photoshop's PSD files. You can give it a try if you're thinking about making a switch without worrying that you won't be able to work on the projects you've already created. Plus, again, it's free, and you can give it a try and see if it meets your needs first. Unlike many similar apps, the interface again is familiar, and the learning curve is not as steep as you might think. I recommend you check out Krita, and you can find it at krita.org, Krita.org. And that is this episode's recommendation. And now for this episode's featured content with Miss Kerry Gallagher about open education resources, or OER. Kerry Gallagher is a passionate, award-winning educator. Trained as both a teacher and an attorney, she understands that a combination of effective pedagogy, policy, school culture, and global connections are necessary to make meaningful progress that puts learners first. Kerry taught middle and high school history in Massachusetts and New Hampshire with BYOD programs for 13 years. As a classroom teacher, Kerry's classroom was paperless and collaborative. She is currently the digital learning specialist at St. John's Prep in Danvers, Massachusetts. Kerry is also an education trainer, writer, TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, and a policy advocate. She is a well-rounded educator and mother of 2 children, so she understands the importance of the whole child when considering the role of technology in education. Welcome to the House of EdTech, Kerry Gallagher.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Mr. Nessie. That's quite the intro. It sounds so fancy when you say it like that.
You're probably in line with me that you want people to introduce you like that anytime you appear somewhere.
Oh, I mean, just walking into the school building every day, that would be great, yes.
Would you also want trumpets and horns and stuff?
I think I need someone from Hamilton to write my introduction music, something more trendy.
That's a lot of people's dreams, to have a Hamilton-like song to go with them.
Oh, totally. Yeah, Lin-Manuel, he can totally be the composer of my intro music.
Nice. And he could hang out with you whenever he felt like it.
I mean, I would hang out with him if that was cool. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to throw you a curveball right off the bat.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Because there was something interesting in your bio that I just can't ignore, and I'm taking this new approach here in 2017 to not just talk about tech. So everybody, we will get to the education and technology. I want to know how somebody becomes a level 2 certified professional ski instructor of America.
You ski a lot. So PSIA is an organization that governs and certifies ski instructors, just like there are organizations that certify classroom teachers. And in order to become certified, you have to pass an on-snow exam and a written exam demonstrating the ability to perform certain tasks in order to, model them for your students. But also you have to take a written exam so that you can prove that you understand the anatomy of the body and how the skis and the technology work on the snow. So that's the answer to that question. But I also got to do some racing, and racing certifications are even a whole separate thing with separate tests. So besides the classroom, I think skiing is for sure my top passion. And it's something that I'm lucky enough to be able to have taught my own children how to do. And now I have a couple little ski racers on my hands. And so it's something that we do as a family. It's really, we all love it.
I can safely say that, one, I've skied safely the handful of times that I've done it, knock on wood. And it's something that before I had done it, I always thought to myself, I will never do this because I'll be the person who first time out breaks a leg and, that's the end of that.
Well, if you have that PSA level 2 certified instructor, you should be fine.
Well, I am self-taught, I can happily say, from the bunny slope to not breaking my leg. And it's been a few years since I've actually hit the slopes, as you guys say. But it's something that I have enjoyed, and I don't know if I've ever gone fast, but again, I haven't fallen down and broken anything. So as a ski racer, let me just ask this. Have you ever been clocked, and how fast do you go, or have you gone?
I have been, but I don't remember exactly. I mean, there's apps that can do that for anybody now. So if you're carrying your phone in your pocket, you can clock yourself. And I don't remember exactly. I think I've been clocked like at 50 miles per hour, but you always wonder whether those apps are accurate or not. I don't know.
Like, do they just make you feel good?
I guess. Yeah. For me, it's just, honestly, I like being outside in the cold more than I like being outside in the summer. Winter is my favorite. So, and it's definitely because of skiing. I spent this past week, we were just getting off a nice long weekend, and I spent the whole weekend outside in the cold, and I just wouldn't change a thing.
That's fantastic. And you have the little ones who also ski as well.
Yeah, I started them both when they were just about 2, so they couldn't even really speak completely fluently like they can now, but they could ski. And so they never remember not knowing how to ski. And that's how we like it. People often ask me, what would you do if your kids didn't like skiing? And the answer is, well, they didn't really have a choice. That's what we do.
We're Gallaghers. We ski.
That's what we do. Yeah. But for sure, I'm sure as you can hear my voice, it is definitely a passion. It's a place. It's a place and a way for me to unwind and blow off some steam and clear my head, get away a little bit with the people I love. And so it requires just as much thinking and training and creativity as teaching does. And so perhaps that's why I love it so much, because I get to have that in 2 areas of my life.
That's awesome. And I wasn't even going to try and get fancy and try and relate the skiing to education, but you did a nice job there.
Oh, I gave you a segue. You're welcome.
That's awesome. So aside from talking about your passion of, moving fast on ice, we're also going to talk tonight about 2 other passions you have. And the first one is instructional design, but something that is, I guess, new. And I'm not even going to call it a fad, because I'm in your camp that it should be becoming the norm, and that's using open education resources. So why don't we start there, and let's tell the audience a little bit about first what an open education resource is and what that means.
Yeah, so openly licensed education resources are resources that are typically available online, although they don't necessarily all have to be digital in form, but they are created by hopefully people who are experts in the field and have done significant research and are willing to make their work available for free with a Creative Commons license, so that other users who discover those resources can take them and break them apart, remix them with their own resources, change the way that they use them, even if it doesn't necessarily fit the intention of the creator, in a way that fits their classroom and fits their students and fits their teaching style and fits the resources that are available to them in the best possible way. Traditionally, openly licensed education resources have not always been easy to find online and have not always been of the highest quality. But because the movement has grown and has gained so much steam, mostly thankfully to the Department of EdTech in Washington, D.C., and the work of the leaders on the project, Andrew Marcinick and Christina Peters. They have been able to get some major players in the digital publishing marketplace to organize those materials in places where they're more easily searchable, and teachers can then access them and pull them together and remix them, like I said, in a way that works for their students and can really personalize instruction.
What are some of those things that somebody might be thinking that, oh, that's got to be an open resource, but no, definitely not. Don't use that. That's not what we're talking about here. What are the bad examples? So
a lot of times, teachers that I work with or that I'm teaching about OER will think that, just about any video clip you can find on YouTube is OER, just because they can access it for free. And that's certainly not the case. A lot of those materials are on YouTube, maybe temporarily, maybe illegally, and streaming them in the classroom actually violates the copyright of those materials. So it's important to make sure that you know exactly what you're showing. And if your school or you have not purchased a documentary, for example, that you want to show in your classroom, looking up a bootleg version on YouTube that YouTube just hasn't caught and taken down yet is not the right solution. And it's not setting the right example for our students when it comes to using resources responsibly. So that's one example that I think is one of the most common ones that I come across. So the other example I can think of too is that sometimes when people buy textbooks, there's like a digital platform that goes with it. And that digital platform contains articles and images and maps and graphics and diagrams. And those are not openly licensed resources. Those are resources that are made available to the teacher because the district has purchased a book, whether it be a digital book or a physical book, from a publisher. And so those resources cannot be used in the same way as OER.
So would you say that copyright and appropriate use of materials is not the big deciding factor as to whether or not something is an open education resource?
Well, by definition, in order for something to be an openly licensed education resource, it has to have a Creative Commons license on it, which is different than a copyright license.
Okay, I am fully educated now.
Yes.
Kerry, you've shared some examples of where we don't want to go, like YouTube or just photocopying out of a textbook or resource guide. Where should teachers be looking for open education resources?
So as I mentioned before, the Department of EdTech has a Go Open initiative, and they've partnered with some groups who have provided platforms where it's easier for teachers to search based on content or standards to find OERs that will be the most useful for them. One of my favorites is OER Commons. I think it's the most vast resource site, and the way you can refine the search, I think, is perhaps one of the best. So that's OER Commons. Another one that I like that we use at my school is HoET080 platform. And a lot of schools already use HoET080 as a tool for research in their library, and they've added a whole OER search portion to their offerings that if you already use HoET080 in your library, you have it already. Others are available from Edmodo and Microsoft and Amazon. So depending on the tools that you may already be using in your school, you may actually have access to an OER search tool and not realize it. So those are some platforms to get started with.
Now, when we started, you had said that they don't necessarily have to be digital. So I'd like to think that everybody who listens to this podcast is digital in some capacity, but they also may be here to improve. But where can maybe the not so tech savvy teacher go to find these resources if they're not digital?
So they all can be found digitally. That really is the best place to find them. But I also am cognizant that not every teacher is in a classroom environment where every student has a device. And so with OER, it's okay to photocopy those resources and distribute them on paper if that's what you have to do, so that every student has the resources that they need in the classroom in front of you. So that's what I mean by they don't have to be digital. Some of the best OERs, though, are online simulations, audio recordings like podcasts like this one, video recordings, clips. And so in that case, obviously the digital platform is ideal. But I do know that there are districts that have gone OER and have put together a bunch of resources into their own version of a textbook that they've photocopied and handed out to students because they just didn't have the Wi-Fi infrastructure to support a completely digitized curriculum. So OER gives you that flexibility to use it the way you need to use it to meet your learners.
I think that makes perfect sense. You say that districts are going OER. And to me, that sounds similar to when you say, a district is going one-to-one or they're going, BYOD. So it is some sort of initiative. Why are districts going OER? And because we don't do softballs here on the House of EdTech, why should a district consider going this route?
So I think it's hard for a district to, the term that the Department of EdTech uses is go open. I think it's hard for a district to do it district-wide. It's hard for it to be a top-down thing. I do think it's important to have administrator support in order to make sure that teachers have the time and the flexibility to make the adjustment. But it really needs to be something where there's a great deal of teacher buy-in in order for it to work well. In my opinion, the teachers should be the ones who desperately want to start using OER in their classroom, because as a teacher, I felt as though using OER allowed me to honor my learners and their needs in a much more customizable way, and it allowed me to flex my professional creative muscles as a teacher. When using OER, I felt like I had more freedom to design lessons that engage my students, that expose them to lots of different mixed media, that encourage them to be creative with that media and use it to create something original that help them share their thinking and their learning in a way that they'd never been able to do before. So teachers should want to go open or use OER because it gives them that flexibility and it allows them to really engage each and every learner in a way that helps that learner understand the concept, because Some students might learn better by watching video. Others might learn better by experimenting with a simulation. Others just learn better by reading and highlighting and marking up a text. And OER allows teachers to pull together resources of all those different types about a single topic so that every student has something that allows them to learn best. With traditional resources, that isn't always possible. OER really allows that mixing and matching and changing that no other resources allow teachers to do.
For that teacher who has been doing it one way for a while, they just love going to YouTube or, basically doing it how we've defined it as being, the wrong way or not really the best way. Why should they change when they've gotten comfortable and they view that as it's just easy to go to YouTube, for example? Mm-hmm. Does this take more work to go OER? Yeah,
and some stuff on YouTube is OER. It's for teachers. It's what's going to become important is the ability to recognize what is OER and what isn't on platforms like YouTube. But first of all, to answer your question, I'm a 15-year teacher.
I hope I didn't offend you.
Hang on a second. No, not at all. And I think the point is that there are many educators out there who have been teaching for a really long time and are constantly growing and shifting. And there are others who taught one way their first year and never really shifted. And OER is a big shift, whether you've been experimenting with technology or experimenting with tools or you haven't really shifted anything. Going from a traditional text, which and resources, which are the resources and texts that we were taught with throughout our school experience before becoming educators. Because let's be honest, this OER movement, it's not new, but on the scale that it exists now, it is new. And the way it's being talked about in education, I think, is also it's more moving and it's more compelling than it's ever been before. So for those teachers, I would say the best thing to do would be to talk to someone, a fellow classroom teacher who you trust, who's already using OER. And it doesn't have to be someone who's using it in every single lesson, every single day. And ask them why they started to use it in a particular lesson or in a particular project and why the OER were better for their students and for them as teachers. And then ask them how they curate them, how they collect them and package them for their students. And then go in there and just watch the students interact with those resources and see for yourself the change in how students are engaged and interested and are compelled to actually dig deeper and research because of the way the resources vary the way children are able to look at any topic or experiment with any skill. And once you're kind of hooked on it and understand why it's important to try it, the next step is the how. So the how really takes practice and it takes a bit of a willingness to spend some time redesigning a lesson or project. And this is where it becomes a little bit challenging. So for educators who have been teaching a certain way for a long time and maybe don't spend a ton of time on planning anymore, this is going to be a shift in how they spend their time when they're preparing for their job. They are going to have to spend more time on that planning process because it isn't just about taking the OER and putting them into an existing lesson. It's finding the OER, experimenting with the OER, and then figuring out how to completely redesign the lesson in a way that is different than they've ever taught before. OER puts a lot more responsibility on the learner to look at the resources, play with the resources, experiment with the resources, whereas traditional teaching with some of those traditionally published texts put a lot more onus on the teacher to be the disseminator of information with, just follow-up questions, I guess. So this way of teaching, it does take, it's often a good idea for those veteran teachers to watch it modeled by a colleague and then to sit down with that colleague and design a new lesson with OER or a new project together. As a matter of fact, when I do district trainings, I sometimes go into districts and do trainings on how to find OER and then how to make it into a lesson. I often request that teachers come to those trainings with their colleagues who teach the same or similar subjects so that they're co-designing their first OER lesson together, and then all of them can take it, use it in their classrooms, and give one another feedback so that they can improve it for next time. Another thing that I think is really important is for teachers to not try to go open with their entire curriculum their first year out. If you can design one lesson or project a quarter with OER your first year, that's a success. And then you have those in your back pocket. All you have to do is tweak them. The next year, add a second lesson or unit per quarter. And within 3 or 4 years, you'll be almost entirely using open educational resources. And you'll also have learned how to be more creative with lesson design and give students more responsibility.
That's great advice. And for the administrator who listens, don't make your teachers go 100% OER in the first year. Break it down, make it achievable.
Right. And allow teachers to work in teams and give them time to work in teams. A lot of times districts decide to go open because of the cost savings. Traditional texts are very expensive and OER are free, but administrators need to look at the budget that they've invested in the purchase of those traditional texts and whatever they're going to save because of open education resources. For a decent amount of time, it needs to be reinvested in the professional learning and time that teachers need to redesign their projects using these resources. It isn't going to happen overnight.
Oh, that makes perfect sense to reallocate the money, which is obviously a big factor.
And again, that's something that the folks at the Go Open movement at the Department of EdTech are reiterating to administrators at their summits that they're having regionally all over the country. And it's something that's really clearly stated right there on their website where they have all their information.
Is there something out there for all content areas?
The weight behind the movement now, and because of how fast it's moving and because of how much teachers want it, because of the ability to personalize their students' learning experiences, there are many resources in literally every subject area that teachers can access for free. I've started to talk with teachers that I trust who I know are using OER in lots of different subject areas, literally from pre-K through grade 12. And I've started to collect my own personal database of their top, 5 to 10 OER websites that I share with teachers who I get to train on OER instructional design in districts. And I found that especially for teachers who are just getting started with OER, giving them those top 5 in their subject area is a great way to introduce them to OER because it's less overwhelming than sometimes searching OER Commons or a larger search tool like that.
I wouldn't be doing my job as the host if I didn't say, Kerry, would it be possible or would you be willing to share any of those resources that I could link out for the listeners?
Yeah, I could definitely share. I could share my top 4 or 5 in the 4 main content areas, which is social studies, science, math, English. But I do have more for a lot, like the fine arts, like I said, for pre-K through 5. So people could reach out to me and I could share some of those other ones on a more personal basis for sure.
Sounds good. So we'll get your contact information before we let you go.
You got it.
and they will be very appreciative.
Sure, but
Now, Kerry, one other aspect of OER that we haven't touched on yet is the student perspective. So in your experience, what is the student's reaction or feedback from using OER in their classrooms? What does that classroom look like, and how do students feel about it?
I mean, earlier I mentioned that when using OER, a lot of times more of the onus is on the learner to dig through the resources, experiment with the resources, take those resources and use them to make something new to express what they've learned. So for many students who have been educated up through a system that is filled with more traditional lessons and classroom experiences where the teacher is the expert who's conveying the information, it can be a tough transition for them, just like it can be a tough transition for a traditional teacher. And so they need to be retrained on this new way of learning. And what I find is at first, it's important for there to be lots of structures in place. So even if you want to give your students a learning goal or an essential question, give them a bunch of OER that you've curated and let them loose, they probably aren't going to be ready for that the first time you use OER. They're probably going to need guidance on which resources to look at first, second, and third. When they're looking at those resources, what should they be looking for? What should they be trying? What should they be planning? How should they be recording their learning? And throughout the process, they're going to need lots and lots of feedback. So if the teacher is no longer in the front of the room while students are working through these resources, that means the teacher needs to be in the thick of it with the students, not sitting back at their desk planning their next lesson, but sitting on the floor with students, asking them questions, recognizing that thinking face from across the room and walking over to that student and saying, I can tell you're wondering something, what's going through your head. And it's very important, as with any type of learning experience, to provide students with opportunities for lots of formative assessments along the way so that you can check in on their progress and they'll know how they're progressing right away, and that those formative assessments are truly formative and not graded, so that students don't feel pressure not to make mistakes. It's important for them to make mistakes along the way so that they know what they know and they know what they don't know. So it also means that the classroom is noisy, that sometimes students have to spill out into the hallway to find a quiet space. It means that students are going to come up with a variety of ways to share their learning, and not every student's learning path is going to go down the same route. Some students may learn more, as I said earlier, from watching videos. Some may learn more from reading. Some may need to read first and then watch a video in order to truly digest the information. Some may need to, explain it themselves before they really have grasped it, and they need to talk out loud to somebody else. So OER is going to allow students to do all of those things, and it's the teacher's job to create the space that makes students comfortable to pursue their individual learning paths that way, but provides enough structure and feedback so that they're not lost.
And as I'm understanding how you described it, it really seems like for the teacher who starts out with this, they and their students are almost really on equal footing in terms of, I'm the teacher and I want to provide this new experience, but also at the same time, I need to be supportive of the students on the receiving end of this. And the students are having, a similar reaction to the teacher, that like, okay, this is new. I have a little more academic freedom, but I still want to feel that safety and support of my teacher. Teachers need the support of their administration. So this really puts everybody on an equal playing field in terms of what are the dynamics of a classroom.
It really does. The way OER works in the classroom allows everyone to hold everyone else around them accountable for their role. Teachers need to provide structure, but also freedom. And finding that balance is sometimes challenging. And sometimes you'll have students in the same classroom who need more structure than others, and some need more freedom than others. And you have to be able to talk with them about how you can provide that differentiated experience, even though they're in the same room together.
And again, even what you just said, you could substitute out teachers and swap out kids need support for the kinks that they're going to encounter along the way.
Mm-hmm. Precisely.
So before I let you go, last question. How can people connect with you, Kerry, and pick your brain? Where can they find your content and be your educational buddy?
So my website is www.kerryhawk02.com. That's KERRYHAWK02. And that is my handle, KerryHawk02, on pretty much everything. Twitter, Instagram, Voxer, Snapchat. You can find me in all of those places, and I'm happy to connect. As with many ed techies, Twitter is typically the best place to reach out, either via tweet or DM. But if you don't follow my Instagram, you don't really know me. So definitely hit that one up too. And those DMs are also always valuable.
Nice. Kerry Gallagher, thank you so much once again for being here on the House of EdTech.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was great to talk to you. It was a pleasure. And as I said before, an honor.
It was such a pleasure to speak with Kerry. And if you're not connected with her, you need to. So again, you can connect with her on Twitter. She is KerryHawk02, and she has a phenomenal website. She's a fantastic blogger, KerryHawk02.com. You need to be connected with and learning from Kerry. She's a fantastic personality, and hey, you may even run into her on the slopes. So, with that, just a couple things left here in the episode. Let's meet this episode's House of EdTech VIP. Congratulations to this episode's VIP, Mr. Jake Miller. Jake is an authorized Google Apps for Education trainer and is currently the Technology Integration Specialist for Brady Middle School in the Orange County School District. At Brady, Jake helps manage the implementation of Google Apps, one-to-one Chromebooks, and Schoology, all while working with a team to envision the building's future integration of STEM, Fab Labs, and makerspaces. He is a member of the Lead to Learn Project Core team, which was recently awarded a $750,000 straight A grant to further the school's efforts in 21st century learning through innovation, design thinking, and project-based learning with access to, again, the Fab Lab, Makerspace, and other design resources. He previously taught and co-created a middle school STEM program at Kimpton Middle School in Stowe Monroe Falls, Ohio, and prior to that, he taught 9 years of math and science in various grades. His bachelor's degree is in middle-level education for math and science from the University of Akron, and his master's degree is in instructional technology from Kent State University. Jake has presented at many conferences, including the Chromebook Institute Great Lakes, the Spark Education Conference, the ITIP Ohio Summit featuring Google Apps for Education, and many others. He has also led professional development for many area school districts and is the technology consultant for the Martha Holden Jennings grant-funded projects Writing Ourselves and Writing Ourselves Too. You need to connect with Mr. Miller. He is on Twitter, of course, Jake Miller Tech, and that's JakeMiller Tech, TECH. He is also married. He's got a crazy life. He's got a wonderful wife, 3 kids, and a dog named Kermit. So make sure you're connected to Jake. And congratulations, Mr. Miller. You are the House of EdTech VIP. And that is going to do it for episode 80 of the House of EdTech podcast. Thank you once again to summerpd.com for supporting this episode. When you go over to summerpd.com, be sure you use the promo code House of EdTech, save yourself $10, and get yourself some awesome professional development on your schedule. Please keep the conversation going. Visit the website, chrisnessy.com/80, and that's going to point you to the show notes for this episode, and that's going to have all the links and information that I talked about, like Krita, and everything that Kerry and I talked about in our conversation. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts, so leave a comment on the show notes, send me an email. Basically, go to chrisnessy.com/feedback, and that's going to give you all the ways that you can connect with me. The fastest, let's connect on Twitter. My username is Mr. Nessy, MRNESI, and please use the hashtag House of EdTech, and I will be sure to respond. Now, if you enjoy the House of EdTech, hey, and it's just you and me here, do me a couple of favors. First and foremost, tell somebody else about the podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to share great podcasts you love, whether it's this or all the many that you listen to. I'd also appreciate a rating and review in iTunes. That's going to go a long way. You can also show your support through patreon.com. Go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. And as always, I'd like to thank my awesome supporters, Jen Giffen, Peggy George, Mark Grindell, Dan Gallagher, Jeff Herb, and Brent Warner. Thank you so much. You guys make the show financially more possible and are helping me do some of the things that I'm doing behind the scenes. So thank you so much. The next episode of the House of EdTech, episode 81, wink wink, 19 away from 100, oh baby. Episode 81 is going to be released on March 5th, 2017. And I'll be speaking with Megan Forbes, and she is a middle school teacher and YouTuber. It was a really cool conversation, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, just to remind you, I'd love to have you come out to chrisnessy.com/Facebook and be a part of the community over there. Thank you again, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you for joining me. And remember, using technology, of course, isn't difficult. Just give it a try.
The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.